You ever have one of those mornings where you think you're just going to sneak out for a little peace and quiet, but instead you wind up exposing the biggest scam in your town's history and accidentally become the face of HOA justice on the internet? Yeah, me neither. At least not until the day Patricia Wellington, Queen of Wellington Estates HOA, called the cops on me for stealing fish out of my own lake. Seriously, she shouted into her phone, "Arrest him, he's stealing our fish." And I just stood there holding my $20 rod, feeling like I'd fallen into the twilight zone. One phone call, that's all it took for the whole house of cards to come tumbling down and for Patricia to nuke her little empire to the tune of $3.2 million. Let me back up a sec, because if you've ever dealt with a power-mad HOA, you know exactly how fast things can spiral. It was a cool April morning mist rising off the water like something out of a dream. And for me, that lake was more than just a patch of water. It was therapy after losing my dad. I'd spent 20 years designing gardens for rich people, putting up with their phone calls about the wrong shade of roses, only to finally pour every cent of my inheritance into this ranch. 5 acres, quiet mornings, no HOA nonsense, just me, my rod, and the chance to breathe. That is, until Patricia and her lackey Brandon came barreling down the path in a golf cart at 7 a.m., her in a power suit, like she was late for a congressional hearing, him clutching his tablet like a life raft. "You're trespassing on HOA property," she snapped, brandishing her phone and telling Brandon to record everything for evidence. I tried explaining politely that the lake was on my deed, my property, and the HOA line wasn't even close. She laughed. Flat out laughed in my face, waving her phone. There's no such thing as private property in Wellington Estates, and before I knew it, she was calling 911, putting on the performance of a lifetime about illegal fishing operations. I wish I was making that up. Within 15 minutes, we had 2 cruisers rolling up, lights and all. The neighbors trickled out in their bathrobes, phones in hand, some looking worried, others downright amused. Officer Martinez took one look at my fishing gear, one look at my paperwork, and told Patricia politely but firmly that the lake was well outside her jurisdiction. But she wouldn't let up. She started ranting about community development, let it slip, there were big plans for the lake, and suddenly the crowd got real interested. Brandon looked ready to disappear through the grass. And then, as Patricia stormed off, I caught a glimpse of her laptop. She was deleting a file labeled Loan 3.2M XLSX. Not subtle. Brandon noticed too, and that was the moment I realized this wasn't about fishing at all. There was something way bigger going on: secret loans, hush-hush development projects, and Patricia holding on to power like it was oxygen. Next thing I know, my mailbox is stuffed with violation notices. 47 in 72 hours, honestly. That has to be some kind of record, right? Every notice more ridiculous than the last: fishing rod too long, unauthorized use of water, disturbing aquatic wildlife at non-designated hours. $2,350 in fines for casting a line into my own lake. My wife Sarah found me at the table surrounded by notices. She rubbed my shoulders. "Maybe we should just move," she whispered. "It's not worth your health." But all I could see was my dad's photo on the wall. Man worked double shifts his whole life so I could have a place like this. No way was I letting Patricia scare us off. So I fought back. Bought security cameras, installed them all around the lake, and it paid off, because right after sunset, while I was flipping burgers, Margaret Hayes, my 70-year-old neighbor and former HOA treasurer, showed up at my door looking over her shoulder like we were in some kind of spy flick. She told me Patricia forced her out years ago after she'd found creative accounting in the HOA books. Showed me a folder of old invoices, roadwork billed at $500,000 that only cost $50,000, landscaping for $200,000 that never even happened. All routed through KP Construction, Patricia's husband's company. That night at 2 a.m., my cameras caught Brandon skulking along the lakeshore with 2 buckets pouring green dye into the water while talking to Patricia on the phone. "Yes, Mrs. Wellington, I'm doing it now. The dye will disperse by morning. The lake will look contaminated." It was surreal. The next morning, Patricia rolled up with some guy dressed like a discount inspector, waving a clipboard and shouting about environmental disasters and toxic algae. But I'd already called the real county inspector, and when he arrived, credentials badged, the whole 9 yards, I played him the security footage. His face went white. "Ma'am, this is a federal crime." Patricia tried to pin it on Brandon, but the inspector wasn't buying it. HOA got slapped with a $5,000 fine, and Patricia got a nice little warning about pending criminal charges. After everyone left, Brandon lingered, looking miserable. Quietly, he pressed a flash drive into my hand. She's been selling lots around your lake. She doesn't own it, but she took $50,000 deposits from 30 investors, over $1 million in fraud. My grandmother lives here. I can't do this anymore. The files showed it all: fake contracts, forged documents, development plans with my lake at the center, lots, sold money, pocketed, and the bank breathing down Patricia's neck for that $3.2 million loan. There was even a clause: if the HOA faced legal trouble, the bank could call in the whole loan penalties, and all totaling over $6 million. Suddenly, Patricia was everywhere, calling emergency meetings, trying to push through a $5,000 assessment on every homeowner to cover urgent repairs. The crowd turned on her, demanding to see real financial records. Someone even shouted, "Where did all the money go?" Patricia tried to bluff, but the room erupted. That night, she showed up at my door, face pale, hair frazzled, offering cash threats, even permits for anything I wanted if I'd just drop it. I told her no, and that's when the threat started. My mailbox smashed, Sarah's tires slashed, dead fish on our doorstep, anonymous calls to Sarah's boss. It was war. But Brandon had my back. At midnight in a diner, he slid me master access to the HOA office and cloud backups of everything. She's trying to move the assets, but the bank already knows. I talked to the state attorney general. The next night, Patricia tried to ram through a vote transferring everything to her husband's name, but Brandon walked in and dropped the contracts on the table. 30 investors, all defrauded, and every document preserved. When it all finally exploded in court, the place was packed. 200 residents, news crews, even the bank's lawyer with a stack of loan docs, Jennifer. My lawyer walked the judge through everything: fake invoices, fraud, environmental crimes, recordings of Patricia threatening residents. The judge ordered immediate criminal charges, froze all HOA assets, and started the process to dissolve the HOA. Patricia was done. As they wheeled her out on a stretcher, mumbling about lakes and loans, I realized the little kingdom she'd built on threats and fake rules was gone in less than 3 hours. 6 months later, I'm sitting by my lake, no green dye, no angry power suits, just peace, filming a video for 15 million viewers who tuned in for justice. Patricia's mugshot is an internet meme. Now her house foreclosed, her husband's company bankrupt. Brandon, the unlikely hero, ended up working for the DA investigating HOA scams across the state. Margaret became a legend, helping neighbors all over town audit their books and root out corruption. And Wellington Estates, for the first time in 8 years, is free property values, up, families finally trusting each other. Again, the old HOA office, now a community center where kids fish off the dock I built. Turns out people don't need an iron-fisted board to live together. They just need a little decency and a reason to come together. Even the 30 investors got most of their money back. The story made national news, sparked new laws, and inspired people all over the country to stand up for themselves. You know what's wild? All this started because one woman couldn't let a man fish in his own lake. If you ask me, justice is a funny thing. It doesn't always show up in a courtroom. Sometimes it's a $3.2 million phone call, a good neighbor willing to do the right thing, or just a stubborn guy who refused to back down. So tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? Drop your own HOA horror stories in the comments. Share this with someone who needs a little hope, and remember, sometimes the biggest catches aren't in the water. Thanks for listening. Now, if you'll excuse me, the fish are biting and I've got a lake to enjoy.